Canada just imposed 25% retaliatory tariffs against the United States, and Ontario just ripped up a $100 million contract with Starlink, which leaves many of us wondering, will Starlink prices go up due to this escalating trade war? In this video, I'm going to be doing my best to try to answer those questions and give you my thoughts on this developing situation. Let's start by talking about the 25% tariffs that just went into play this week. So Tuesday, the United States announced that they would be putting 25% tariffs on goods imported from Canada. Canada turned around and said, hey, we're going to retaliate by putting our own 25% tariff on US goods coming into Canada. And so now a trade war has basically started. Starlink has over 400,000 customers in Canada. It's one of their largest markets. It's kind of like the United States in the sense that the internet broadband infrastructure isn't really built out well. It's a very big country, very spread out with a lot of rural areas. So the countries are very similar in that way. So they both have a lot of Starlink users and a lot of Starlink demand. Tariffs are taxes charged to goods imported into a country, and the importer pays those taxes. So in this case, it's going to be either Starlink who foots the bill for that, for those increased costs, or they're going to pass it on to the customer in the form of increased prices. And that's what everybody is kind of worried about with this trade war. Is Starlink service or Starlink hardware going to get more expensive in Canada as a result? I went on to the Canadian government's website and checked the list of goods that are affected by their 25% tariffs. And fortunately, Starlink, it doesn't appear anywhere on that list. I couldn't really even find a category that Starlink would fit into, like electronics or satellite equipment, Wi-Fi routers, that sort of thing. It looks like a lot of electronics are excluded from the tariffs at this point. So the good news is that no, I don't think that Starlink prices will be increasing in Canada as a result of this trade war, at least at the time of this video, unless something else escalates. Now, I also checked the Starlink website, the prices that Starlink is charging for customers in Canada, and they're the same as they were a few days ago when I checked. So Starlink prices have not increased in Canada at this point, but there's still room in the future if this trade war keeps escalating and more goods are added to those tariffs that Canada is imposing. Another casualty of the trade war is the termination of a $100 million Starlink contract that they had worked out with the Canadian province of Ontario. Doug Ford, Ontario's premier, said, we're ripping up Ontario's contract with Starlink. And he went on to say that that is a result of the 25% tariffs that the United States put in place against Canada. Now, this made national headlines, so I did want to clear up some misinformation on that. So this move by Ontario does not directly target Starlink specifically. So the policy that they've enacted is that they're not going to do government business with any US firm for any reason. So since Starlink is a US firm, they fall under that new policy. That's why they've canceled the contract. They're not, going after Elon Musk specifically or anything like that. They're just not doing business with the United States at all. Now, this contract was signed back in November of last year, and its value is $100 million Canadian or $68 million USD. And that's a lot of lost revenue for Starlink. The contract was to provide subsidized Starlink service for homes and businesses. I think the number was around 15,000 customers that were going to get government subsidized Starlink service through this program. So when this hit national news, a lot of people that don't know anything about Starlink were, spreading all kinds of misinformation. Like, for example, Starlink service is going to be cut off or unavailable in Canada now. And that's simply not the case. All this contract did was, it was a deal between Starlink and the government of Ontario to provide subsidized service. So Ontario was going to buy the services and the hardware from Starlink directly and then give it to their citizens in those remote areas of Ontario. So that's no longer going to be taking place. But if you're in Canada, if you're in Ontario, you can still buy Starlink. You can still access Starlink if you're a current customer. Nothing on that front has changed. What it does mean though is that those 15,000 homes and businesses in undisturbed areas of Ontario are going to have to go through Starlink directly if they want to buy Starlink hardware and services. They're not going to get it subsidized through the government of Ontario. One of the big questions I have though regarding this contract cancellation is, what will Elon Musk think about it? What will he do? Will he retaliate in some sort of way against Ontario or against Canada? And in my opinion, the possibility of that is still completely open. Could he raise service prices in the area to make up for the lost revenue? Could he raise hardware prices? $68 million USD is a lot of money to lose in revenue this year, so there could be ways that he could make that up, and that could be seen as retaliation for that contract cancellation. It is a developing situation, so we'll just have to kind of wait and see. Everything that I'm saying right now is speculation at this point, but it is true that, you know, the relationship between the United States and Canada has been strained. Elon Musk even at one point posted on X that he didn't think Canada was a real country. That post has now been deleted, but it just goes to show you the kind of attitude that Elon Musk has towards Canada at the moment. And those kinds of attacks, they closely align with Elon Musk's boss, US President Donald Trump, who is apparently serious about trying to annex the entire country of Canada as the United States' 51st state, which is just kind of wild and crazy. I have no comment there, but it just goes to show you the kind of rhetoric that's being thrown around in this escalating trade war. As far as my own personal thoughts and opinions on this, you know, this is not a channel that's going to be covering politics. I'm just trying to give you the updates and the developments that are relevant to Starlink that I think you should know about. And since a lot of my audience does watch from Canada, this is something that I want to cover. The good news, at least for now, is that prices for Starlink in Canada are not going to be increasing, at least with the current round of tariffs that we're seeing. The bad news is that if you're one of those 15,000 homes or businesses in remote parts of Ontario, you may be losing out on subsidized internet service. I'd love to hear your thoughts on these two recent Starlink developments. Do you think that Canada should put Starlink on the list of goods that are charged those 25% tariffs? And do you think that Musk should retaliate against Ontario or Canada in some way for canceling that huge contract? I'll chat with you guys in the comments below. I always love reading your feedback, your questions, your thoughts on all these developments. So I'll chat with you in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video.